When my sister Clara announced her engagement, the whole house felt like it was humming with happiness. Mom was on the phone every hour, talking about venues, colors, and caterers. Dad looked 10 years younger, proud that his eldest daughter was about to start her perfect life. And me. I was just thrilled for her. Clara and I had shared everything growing up, secrets, clothes, and late-night confessions about our dreams. I thought this wedding would be another memory we'd make together. I was wrong. At first, I didn't notice the distance forming. I was the first one to congratulate her, the one who offered to help with her engagement party, and even designed the invitations by hand. Clara had hugged me tightly then, whispering, "You're the best sister ever." Those words stayed in my heart like a promise. But as weeks turned into months, something changed. The group chat created for wedding planning didn't include me. When I asked about dress shopping, Clara's answer was awkward and short. "Oh, it's just a small group, Amara, nothing personal." Then she changed the subject. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe she was stressed, maybe she just needed space. Still, the unease crept in. Mom and Dad avoided talking about details when I was around. They'd fall silent mid-conversation, eyes darting toward each other. When I finally asked what was going on, Mom sighed, her voice distant. "Amara, sweetheart, Clara's trying to keep the wedding intimate. You know how you can draw attention sometimes. We don't want any distractions." Her words stung like cold glass pressed against my skin. Distraction. I had always been the one cheering the loudest for Clara, the one fixing her makeup, calming her nerves. How could I be a distraction from the very joy I helped create? I tried to brush it off. I told myself they didn't mean it. I kept waiting for the invitation, for the phone call that would say, "Of course you're part of this. What were you thinking?" But it never came. One afternoon, scrolling through social media, I froze. My screen, filled with images of Clara surrounded by bridesmaids in matching pastel dresses, our cousins, family friends, even her old college roommate whom she once swore she couldn't stand. They were at her bridal shower, laughing, posing, celebrating, and I wasn't there. A hollow ache spread through me, heavy and suffocating. I called Mom, voice shaking. Why didn't anyone tell me? Her reply came sharp and rehearsed. "Amara, please don't make a scene. Clara didn't think you'd fit in with her theme. You'd only feel uncomfortable." That night, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling until dawn. Every childhood memory, Clara and I sharing secrets under a blanket fort, holding hands at Dad's hospital bedside, crying over our first heartbreaks turned sour in my chest. I had been erased from a story I thought I belonged to. When the wedding day came, I didn't receive an invitation. Not a text, not a call. I watched it unfold through filtered photos and smiling videos online. My sister, radiant in her gown, walking down the aisle between the very people who had chosen to pretend I didn't exist. I wanted to hate her, but beneath the anger was something far worse, emptiness. That night, I deleted every family photo from my phone. Each picture felt like a lie now, snapshots of a love that was never equal. In that silence, I made a quiet promise to myself. If they could exclude me from their celebration, I would one day build a life so full, so luminous, that their absence would no longer matter. It was the night I stopped being a sister and started becoming my own person. After Clara's wedding, silence settled into my life like a heavy fog that refused to lift. I stopped checking social media because every scroll was another reminder of what I wasn't part of. My parents smiling, my sister dancing. The family I thought was mine posing under twinkling lights. I didn't cry the way I expected to. Instead, I felt hollow, like someone had reached inside me and quietly taken something I didn't realize I couldn't live without. A month later, I packed 2 suitcases and left for a city 3 hours away. I didn't tell anyone, I just disappeared. I needed to breathe somewhere that didn't echo with memories of being unwanted. The first few weeks were brutal. I lived in a small apartment above a bakery, the air thick with the smell of sugar and yeast. Every morning, I'd watch the baker's daughter laughing through the window with her mother, and my chest would ache. I wondered if I'd ever feel that kind of warmth again. I started looking for work to keep my mind occupied. My degree in design had always been a source of pride, but it felt meaningless now. Then, almost by accident, I stumbled across an ad for an assistant position at a small event planning company. I applied, not expecting much. 2 weeks later, I was hired. Working there changed everything. I learned how to create beauty from chaos, how to turn a plain room into a dreamscape, how to calm brides on the verge of tears, how to make love visible through colors and lights. It was ironic, really. I had been excluded from one wedding, only to find purpose by planning hundreds for others. But for the first time in a long time, I felt useful, whole. My boss, Lydia, noticed my attention to detail and soon trusted me with larger projects. When I suggested a charity gala to raise money for underprivileged children, she gave me full control. I poured myself into it, every centerpiece, every melody, every handwritten invitation. The night of the gala, the venue shimmered under thousands of fairy lights. Guests whispered that it felt like stepping into a dream. I stood in the corner, watching people laugh and dance, feeling something warm and unfamiliar bloom inside me. Pride. That evening, a man approached me with a smile that reached his eyes. He introduced himself as Illy, a journalist covering the event. "You did all this?" he asked, genuine awe in his tone. I nodded, a little shyly. "It's beautiful," he said. "You have a way of making people feel something." It was the first compliment that didn't sound empty. Over the next few months, Illy became a quiet constant in my life. He had a gentleness about him, the kind that made silence feel safe instead of suffocating. We'd meet for coffee after long days, and slowly, I found myself laughing again. Meanwhile, my business began to bloom. Lydia made me a partner, and soon we rebranded the company as Amara Events. The name felt powerful, like reclaiming the identity my family had tried to erase. My online presence grew after the gala photos went viral. People loved my eye for detail, the emotion behind my designs. I started receiving messages from brides across the country, thanking me for creating magic. And then one afternoon, as I was preparing for a client meeting, I received a text from an unknown number. It was my cousin, Emily. "Just wanted to say Clara and Thomas are having problems. Thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of what I felt. There was no satisfaction, just an odd sense of closure. Perfection, it seemed, didn't last forever. That night, as I sat by my window watching city lights shimmer, I realized I was finally at peace. The silence that once felt like punishment had become my sanctuary. I had lost a family, but somewhere along the way, I had found myself. Illy proposed on a quiet evening in our small garden, surrounded by the same string lights we had hung together months before. It wasn't grand or dramatic, just honest. He held my hand, eyes trembling with emotion, and said, "You've built beauty from heartbreak, Amara. I want to build forever with you." For the first time in years, tears spilled down my cheeks, not from pain, but from peace. I said yes. Planning my own wedding felt surreal. My entire life, I had imagined this moment, but it had always been tied to family. My mother adjusting my veil, Clara teasing me about tripping down the aisle. Now, I planned it without them, and strangely, that felt right. Illy and I decided on a seaside ceremony. I envisioned it as a celebration of renewal, not revenge. Every detail carried meaning: the white lilies for new beginnings, the soft gold lights to symbolize healing, and the handwritten vows that spoke of forgiveness. Still, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "They'll find out." When our wedding website went live, it was meant to be private, just a digital invitation for our closest friends and clients. The link included our story, a few photos, and a note thanking everyone who had supported us on our journey. I never expected it to travel beyond that circle, but one morning I woke up to hundreds of notifications. Ili stood beside the bed, his phone glowing in disbelief. "Amara," he said, voice low, "your wedding page is everywhere." Somehow, someone had shared the link publicly. People across the world were reading our story, how I had been excluded from my sister's wedding and had rebuilt my life. Comments poured in, messages from strangers saying my strength inspired them. #Amara's wedding began trending online. At first, I was terrified. I didn't want attention, I just wanted peace. But then I saw how people connected to my pain, how my story became a mirror for others who had been silenced or cast aside. What had started as an accident became something beautiful, a movement of resilience, of rediscovered worth. Companies reached out to offer sponsorships, florists wanted to donate arrangements, and musicians offered to perform for free. I was hesitant, but Ili said something that stayed with me. The world isn't celebrating your sadness, they're celebrating how you rose above it. So, I embraced it. Our wedding became more than just a ceremony. It became a symbol of second chances. I expanded the guest list, inviting every friend who had stood by me, every client who had believed in me, every soul who had sent me kindness when I was at my lowest. But I did not invite my family. A week before the wedding, I received a message from my mother. "Amara, we heard about your wedding. It looks beautiful. Clara and I would love to be part of your big day. It would mean a lot to the family." The word family burned in my chest. I typed for a long time before replying simply, "Thank you for reaching out. The guest list is already full." That was the truth, full of people who had shown love without conditions. The news of my response spread online, sparking debates. Some called it revenge, others called it power. But for me, it wasn't either. It was closure. On the morning of our wedding, the sun rose soft and golden over the ocean. Photographers and journalists lined the cliffs, capturing what the world had come to call the wedding of the heart. I took one deep breath, feeling the wind against my skin, and smiled. The same world that once knew me as the forgotten sister, now knew me as something else entirely. Amara, the woman who turned rejection into grace. And as I walked toward Ili under that endless sky, I realized something simple but profound sometimes. The universe takes away your seat at the wrong table so you can build your own. The morning of my wedding felt like standing at the edge of a new world. The sun rose gently over the sea, brushing the waves with gold, and the air carried that kind of silence that feels sacred, like even nature was holding its breath. My gown shimmered softly in the light, the fabric flowing around me like a promise. I wasn't nervous. Not even a little. I had already lived through the worst heartbreak a person could endure, the feeling of being unwanted by those who should have loved me unconditionally. Compared to that, walking down an aisle towards someone who saw my worth was effortless. The venue was breathtaking. An open garden overlooking the ocean, lined with white lilies and soft gold lanterns swaying in the breeze. Guests filled the seats, hundreds of them, faces beaming with affection. There were people from all over the world, friends, clients, supporters who had followed my story online, even a few strangers who said they felt connected to my journey. But there were no empty chairs. I had made peace with that long before. As the music began, I took Ili's arm and met his gaze. There were tears in his eyes, and that alone made the world blur around me. "You look like everything I ever hoped for," he whispered, voice trembling. I smiled, "So do you." And then, As we took our first steps down the aisle, the sound of clicking cameras filled the air. Not the shallow noise of fame, but something deeper, a collective witnessing of redemption. I didn't notice them at first, standing near the edge of the venue gates. But as I reached the altar, I saw them. My mother, my father, and Clara. They weren't inside, they hadn't been invited. But they had come anyway, standing behind the crowd, separated by the same invisible wall they had built years ago. Clara's eyes were swollen, her hands trembling as she clutched a bouquet of flowers that matched my own. My mother stood beside her, lips pressed tight, torn between pride and regret. For a moment, time slowed. The part of me that used to ache for their approval whispered that I should wave, that maybe this was the moment to mend everything. But then another voice, steadier and wiser, reminded me of every tear, every silence, every time I had been made to feel less than enough. I didn't wave, I didn't turn away either. I simply smiled and walked forward. Illy and I exchanged our vows beneath an arch of roses, the ocean singing behind us. "I promise to choose you," he said, "not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. You've taught me that love is not about perfection, it's about showing up." When it was my turn, my voice trembled. "You showed me what family truly means, Illy. You saw me when others didn't. With you, I am finally home." The crowd erupted in applause as we kissed, a wave of emotion crashing through the air. Cameras captured the moment, and within minutes, the images spread online, the world watching, cheering, crying with us. That night, as the reception glittered under starlight, I noticed a small group outside the gates again, my family still standing there. They hadn't left. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, I felt peace. Later, back in our suite, I took out my phone and typed a message to them. "You taught me what exclusion feels like. It broke me, but it also built me. I've learned that family isn't always about blood. It's about love, respect, and presence. I forgive you, but I've found my place now. Thank you for showing me my worth." I hit send and set the phone aside. Illy wrapped his arms around me, and we stepped onto the balcony together. The sea stretched endlessly before us, calm and eternal. For the first time in years, I felt free, no longer chasing validation, no longer living in the shadows of someone else's acceptance. The sweetest revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was peace. It was joy. It was love that didn't need to prove itself. And as fireworks bloomed over the water, painting the sky in gold and white, I smiled, because in the end, I had built something far greater than the wedding I was once excluded from. I had built a life worth celebrating,